welcome to session 5 of Compassion Camp, our at-home vacation Bible school for this summer. I am so glad that you have joined me for this series of sessions for Vacation Bible School. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you've been having fun at home doing these activities. Before we get started, let's go over what you're going to be needing today for our last session. You're going to need your papers for session 5. They look like this. It says with the world. You are going to need a pencil, scissors, string, tape, and you have in your bag some little earths that look like this. You're going to need to get those out, and crayons, and then make sure you have your mural and your door hanger close by so that we can do that too. So like I said, I am just overwhelmed with so much joy that you guys have participated with this series, and I hope that you have enjoyed it and you've been overwhelmed with happiness and joy as well. Now, speaking of being overwhelmed, sometimes we can be overwhelmed with joy, but sometimes we can be overwhelmed with feelings of sadness and feelings of just not being happy. Maybe too many mistakes, or maybe life is just really busy and it's not been a good busy and you're just feeling overwhelmed. We're going to talk today about fresh starts and starting over. And our story today is about a jubilee and what a jubilee means, and starting over and having a fresh start so that we can bring back overwhelming feelings of happiness and joy. So today our story from the Bible comes from the book of Leviticus, and it's chapter 25. And as I said, you're going to hear the word jubilee. And a jubilee is a tradition. It's a way of starting over. And having a fresh start can make us see and feel and trust God's abundance and the abundance amount of love that He has for all of us and all of creation. So when I'm reading this story today, I really want you to think about a fresh start and think about starting over. So like I said, it comes from Leviticus chapter 25. The people of Israel journeyed through the vast wilderness for many years. Finally, they arrived at Mount Sinai, where they rested. God gave instructions to their leaders, Moses, for their life together in this new land. These were the things God said. This land, we will practice Sabbath together. This will happen not only on the 7th day, but on the 7th year. For 6 years, we will do our regular work and plant seeds. We will grow, prune, and harvest fruits. But in the 7th year, we will let the land rest. Even the land needs peace and quiet. Everyone will be able to harvest and eat whatever the land gives us in that 7th year. In the 50th year, we will celebrate Jubilee together. This will be like the Sabbath every 7 years, where we will let the land rest. It will be a fresh start for the whole community, the land and the people, and everyone will go to their own homes and be together in joy. It is a holy time, and we will be fed and nourished by whatever the land gives us. In this time, we will respond with justice by giving fresh starts. This means that we will be fair and honest to one another. We will take care of those who are sick, who are alone, who are old, or who need help. We will welcome people who are from different countries, and they will be like family. We will work for people's freedom. We will all work together to help everyone rest and rejoice in God's abundance. I will bless the land during this year, so you do not have to work the land. I promise we will all be fed and nourished by the land's gifts. So after listening to what I just read, I would like for you to get out your coloring page, and we're going to talk about and discuss what I just read a little bit. What were some of the things God wanted the Israelites to do? What was He asking of them? What does it feel like to rest? Rest is such a necessary part of our lives. But what does it mean? Why do you think it's important to have a fresh start? Why do you think it's important for the land to rest? Our bodies need rest, but why does the land need rest? I want you to imagine the people of Israel and how they felt about the command. What do you think they thought about resting on the Sabbath or resting on the seventh year? How do you think the land felt? How do you imagine the sick, the lonely, the old felt about this command? What about people from different countries? I want you to take a minute and think about these things while you're coloring your picture, and then you can go ahead and get it cut out. Okay, so once you have your picture colored and cut out, we are going to hang it on our door hanger. So we're going to put some tape on the back, and then tie it onto our dowel rod. And this will make our fifth and final picture as a reminder for what all we have talked about this week. See if I can get it on there. And there we go. And once you have it on there, you can set it to the side and then go ahead and get your mural out. And today is the last day that we will be coloring on our mural. And so today we're talking about fresh starts and starting over. So let's look around. And we also talked about the earth and the earth starting over. So let's kind of look and see if we can find some pictures of life kind of starting over. So one thing that I see is on the food bank, which I've already colored it, but there is some people painting what looks like a mural of the earth on the food bank. So that makes me think of taking care of our earth and a fresh start for the land. I see some people down at the bottom who look like they are picking up some trash along the sidewalk, along the path. So that would be something to color, taking care of our earth. One thing that I think of for starting over, I see up at the top there is a prison, and the prison has been closed. And this is a prison that actually made money, so it's a good thing that it has been closed. And those people who were in it are able to have a fresh start and start over themselves. And I also see a rainbow over the prison, and a rainbow is also a symbol for starting over and a fresh start, and God's promise for us. So those are some things that I see, and so you can go ahead and finish coloring your mural and go ahead and you can hang it maybe in your room, or if you have a spot on your fridge that's big enough, but somewhere as a reminder for all of the things that we have talked about during these 5 sessions. So one thing that I think of doing when I need to slow down and rest and kind of refresh myself, one activity that is really fun to do is puzzles. So the next thing you need to get out is this Jubilee puzzle. And Hayden is very excited about a puzzle. And what I would like for you to do is draw some kind of picture that takes up this whole area, that makes you think of starting over or rest, maybe a scene for outside that makes you think of our earth, the land, something that we've kind of talked about in the story, to symbolize the rest and refresh and restart. So, and then once you get your scene drawn on here, and make sure you cover all the white space in this puzzle area, you can cut it apart, and then when you need something to do to slow down and takes time to rest, you can put your puzzle back together. So in our story today, one of the things that we talked about was a fresh start for the land and rest for the land and starting over for the land to replant it. So one activity that I have for you in your bag are these little, they're actually seed packets, and there are seeds in here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to grow some flowers. These are supposed to be wildflowers. So what you're going to need is your earth seed packets, and you can use all of them if you like. And then you're going to need a cup of some sort. It doesn't have to be clear or any kind of particular cup. But what you're going to do is put a little tiny bit of water in the bottom, just enough to when you put the earth in there. And if you have more than one that you're maybe stacking up, they all need to be able to be in the water so that they can get wet. And you're going to put it in the water like this. You want to make sure, I may actually have to add some water to mine, but it's all wet, and you can kind of see it close enough that you can see it kind of turned a darker blue, so you can tell that it's all wet. And you're actually going to leave it in the water overnight or for a full day. And then once your packet has been in water for a whole day, you can take it out, and you are going to, I'm going to go ahead and do mine, but don't do yours yet. I just want to show you what you are going to do. But don't take yours out of the water yet. You need to leave it in the water for a whole day. So once it's been in there for a whole day, you can take it out, and then you're going to tear it up into kind of pieces. And then if you have some soil, maybe in a flower pot, or even just outside, if you have some dirt, you're going to just lay these just a little bit in the dirt. You don't want to completely cover them, because then they won't sprout. They don't need a lot of soil because they root in very shallow dirt. So you don't need to stick it under and like bury it in dirt. You just need to kind of lay it almost on top of the dirt and just kind of sprinkle a little bit of soil on top of it. And then they should root, and then you'll start to see sprouts probably in a couple of weeks. You got to make sure that you keep it watered though, but don't drown it. Don't put too much water. So that is a fun activity, and you can watch some flowers start fresh. Over these last 5 sessions, we have talked about so much compassion. And in session 1, we talked about seeing how someone is hurt and feeling their hurt, having empathy for someone. We talked about compassion through being brave. We talked about compassion for ourselves. We have talked about compassion for people we meet along the way, not only seeing your hurt and feeling your hurt, but understanding and talking about your hurt. And today we talked about exploring our compassion through the beautiful tradition of Jubilee and having a restart and fresh start, not only for ourselves, but for our earth, and helping us to see and feel and trust in God's abundance love for us and for everyone in the world. So before we go, I would like you to get out your last prayer, and I'm going to read it. It says, "Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom, release, and fresh starts. Help us do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care for ourselves. Make our hearts and our actions sing with your promise of abundance toward the whole world. Amen." And I'm going to let you guys go ahead and start coloring that. And before we go, I'm going to read a book called When God Made the World. And this book is by Matthew Paul Turner. He's the same author who wrote the book When God Made You that we read the other day, or in session 3. So this one is called When God Made the World. In the very beginning, before anything was, before God started doing what it is God does, when all that existed was wide open space, God imagined a universe and began to create. God hung trillions of lights, stars big and stars bright. God turned the dark sky into a glorious sight. God put planets in places with moons in some cases, and galaxies that reach the outermost spaces. God made comets that fly with tails through the sky, and asteroids and meteors that sometimes zoom by. And with cosmic explosions, God set space in motion, causing planets to orbit their suns with devotion. And somewhere amid all the swirling light, inside a cluster of milky white, among stars and planets and cosmic dust, God made a place for the story of us. Because when God made the world, God displayed heaven's glory for you and for me and for all the world's stories. Our planet God made a blue and green sphere and designed it to orbit the sun once a year. God made daytime and nighttime, climates and seasons, and all kinds of weather that varies by region. God made continents and oceans, islands and seas, a north and south pole that God put in deep freeze. God carved rivers and brooks, mountains and caves, made beaches with sand and huge crashing waves. God made tropics and plateaus, glaciers and meadows, marshes and tundras and erupting volcanoes. God made some places high with peaks in the sky and places where snowflakes still fall in July. And in quite a few spots, God made it so hot, should you visit, just know that you must drink a lot. God made valleys so low and geysers that blow, and under earth's surface God put well springs that flow. Then, with gardens and forests and other things green, God made earth come to life using soil and seed. God made cypress and pines, bushes and vines, all kinds of trees with leaves that God designed. Plants full of flavor like basil and thyme, and trees that grow citrus like grapefruit and lime. God made flowering plants and plants that enchant. While most you can touch, God made some that you can't. Roses, be warned, are prickly with thorns, and there's an African melon God covered in horns. And poison ivy's backlash, giving you a rash. Wherever it touches, you'll itch and you'll scratch. But don't let that stop you. Run barefoot through grass, pick a flower or two, or a bouquet perhaps. Find a tree you can climb, or with a seat and some twine, build your very own swing or a backyard zip line. And when you eat grapes or pour syrup on crepes, or into a forest you go to escape, give thanks to God for all that God made, for the fruit and the syrup, for the trees and the shade. Because when God made the world, God did all that God could to create every detail for our joy and our good. Now what happened next is a mystery at best, but God made a bird, and that bird made a nest. So God filled the sky, perhaps over time, with birds and more birds, and most learned how to fly. God made bluebirds and blackbirds, big birds and small birds, a few birds quite absurd, and the loudest birds you've ever heard. Crows crowed, doves cooed, chickens clucked, and owls hooed. Robins chirped, pheasants whirred. The world got noisy when God made birds. Then the oceans God filled with fish, sharks, and krill, creatures God made with fins and with gills, swordfish and trout, fish sleek and fish stout, and whales that God made to breathe through a spout. God made sea rays and eels, redfish, yellow or teal, and some fish so odd they hardly look real, like a fish that has fangs or monster-like face, or a fish that flies or makes its body inflate. And wherever a river, ocean, or sea touches dry land, there's likely to be all sorts of creatures living their lives on land and in water. That's how they survive. Like otters and frogs, turtles on logs, and crocodiles gathering in swampy bogs. And then God made cows, horses, and goats, and God made gibbons with inflatable throats. God planned lions to roar and tigers to pounce, and kangaroos, God thought, let's make you bounce. God made bears to growl, moles to plow, and under full moons, coyotes to howl. Donkeys brayed, giraffes bleated, jaguars prayed, rhinos stampeded. Bunnies hopped, beavers chopped, and in muddy pools, hippos plopped. Yes, all living creatures, from whales to snails, from those covered with feathers to those covered with scales, each God designed with a home in mind to develop and evolve if needed over time. Because when God made the world, every creature on earth became a part of life's circle, having value and worth. And God made people like you and me, people with souls, people with stories, a global family tree. God made us all flesh and bone, covered in skin, and made all our bodies to have hearts beating within. God gave us bellies and legs, fingers and toes, and fashioned our faces with eyes, mouth, and a nose. God made our bodies uniquely equipped for walking and talking, to eat and to skip. God wired our brains to feel love and feel pain, to process and learn, to read and retain. But despite all we share, we're also unique. God made us all human with just a few tweaks. Each of our faces, bodies, and traits, our skin tones, our features, God did create. God made some people shy and some people loud, and some who thrive in the midst of a crowd. Some make music and some like math, and some are prone to blaze their own path. But always remember, because this much is true, God had a purpose for making you, you. So use every gift, every talent or shtick. Make the world better with your God-given trick. Bring smiles to faces, show love and good graces to those who need hope in all different places. Discover a star, a planet or moon, or help keep a forest from dying too soon. Save a whale, hug a tree, protect every bee. Recycle, repurpose, reject apathy. Because all of creation whispers God's story. The mountain, the ocean, the blue morning glory. The raindrops, the sunshine, the grapes on the grapevine. With nature, God gives us a glimpse of divine. And just like a star might showcase God's light, or a waterfall gives us a sign of God's might, the same could be said of me and you. How we live, how we love, tells God's story too. Because when God made the world and the whole world started spinning, the story of God wrote was just a beginning. When God made the world. I just want to thank you one last time for joining me for these 5 sessions of Compassion Camp. I hope you've had a great time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer.
Be filled with compassion.